This video is sponsored by OWC. I've been seeing lots of people out there say that the new Samsung Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra is the new iPad Pro killer. And listen, I'm not one of those people who likes only Apple products and dismisses every other company. I think there are tons of amazing Android phones out there, but one of the categories of devices that is really lackluster compared to Apple, and I think a lot of people who are not Apple fans will actually admit this, are tablets. And so in this video, we're gonna go over this behemoth of a tablet here and compare it to Apple's own monstrosity of the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. And I mean, just holding these two up, they are massive, but they are powerhouses and they are really, really good tablets. And so let's put them up against each other. Now, if you want to skip around to specific sections, we should have chapters up for you, so feel free to jump around if you want to. Of course, I'd really appreciate it if you end up liking this video. You can just hit that like button and subscribe for more content in the future. So let's start with what I like about the Tab S8 Ultra over the iPad Pro, because believe it or not, there are a lot of things that I really do enjoy about this tablet. And let's also address the tiny elephant in the room, and that is the notch. Now, I'm not an anti-notcher. I truly don't care. I've been using it for years on an iPhone. It is what it is. It looks fine to me. But we do need to just bask in the irony that is Samsung making fun of Apple for notches in its iPhones, and then turning around and being the first to incorporate this notch into its tablet. It's just beautiful irony there. Chef's kiss. You gotta love it. I don't understand why companies make fun of other companies for something that they eventually know they're gonna do in the future. This isn't the first time that Samsung's done this, by the way, but you know, just throwing it out there. It is pretty funny. Anyways, yes, there is a notch here. It sits right under the two front-facing cameras. It's really not a big deal. I kind of like this design. There are two actual 12 megapixel wide and ultra wide cameras available here, which is actually one more camera compared to Apple's singular ultra wide camera on the iPad Pro. This notch cuts into Samsung's massive 14.6-inch OLED display, which is easily one of the largest OLED displays that I've used on a mobile device, and it's pretty amazing. It has slim borders all the way around. It's honestly one of the main selling points, in my opinion, about this tablet, and it's been great in all aspects. Whether it's office work, content creation, and content consumption, I absolutely love this display. Now, Apple's 12.9-inch iPad Pro display is no slouch either. In fact, it's actually really good, and the new Liquid Retina XDR mini LED display, there's a huge mouthful, it's pretty close to OLED quality with its deep blacks and stark contrast, but the blooming effect that occurs with mini LED, when you're comparing it to Samsung's OLED panel specifically, I mean, you just don't see that on this, and Samsung, to me, has always been the cream of the crop when it comes to mobile displays for both phones and now this tablet, and so it's not a surprise that I would pick this over the iPad Pro display. Also, let's just talk about how smart it was for Samsung to put its cameras in landscape mode. It's something that Apple should hopefully be doing with its next iPad Pro. Most people are using this gigantic version of a tablet, mini computer. They're definitely using it in landscape for a majority of tasks. And so in fact, I've never once actually used either one of these tablets in portrait mode, except for maybe something that an app didn't scale properly. But other than that, it's 99.9% of the time in a keyboard case in landscape mode. The reason why I'm excited about it being in landscape is because Samsung does offer facial recognition for unlocking this tablet. It's not anywhere near the level of detail and complexity of Face ID, and there's a reason why you can't authenticate payments or passwords with this, but it is useful to get into your tablet in general. Instead, you'll have to use the fingerprint reader to do payments and passwords that's built into the power button. So definitely an edge towards Apple here with its biometrics with Face ID, but just put it in landscape already, please, because it just makes sense. And also, not to mention Zoom calls, video calls, it just makes sense for it to be in the middle when it's in landscape. I don't want to dwell on the rest of the design between each tablets because, that's just going to be a preference thing. I just want to point out some of the things that are just more useful on one or the other. So I assume most of us are just going to throw it in a keyboard case, and so the form factor won't play too much of a factor to me, but I think it's pretty impressive just how thin and light and massive this tablet is. It's so thin that I'm guessing you can pretty easily bend this thing in half. I'm sure there's a specific YouTuber out there that's probably done this. I wouldn't do that, but yeah, you probably could do it. There are 4 speakers on each tablet. They both sound really good for what they are. I'd probably give the edge to the iPad Pro, but I was really impressed with the quad speakers on the S8 Ultra. There's also a USB-C port on the bottom and a micro SD slot for expanding your internal storage, which is something you cannot do on an iPad. It's also important to note that I'm using both of these products with its accompanying keyboard and trackpad combo and its corresponding stylus. So with the Tab S8 Ultra, you do get the S Pen with the tablet inside of the box. It's part of the full price of what you're paying for. With Apple, unfortunately, it's a $99 additional accessory. Obviously, advantage Samsung there, but I also do really like the implementation that Samsung does with its stylus. It does give more features and functionality to this stylus. Just like you can do on phones that carry the S Pen or are compatible with an S Pen, you can actually use Samsung's wide array of S Pen Air commands to quickly jump into a note, Smart Select, Screen Write, Translate Text, and more. And there's also a button on the back for the S Pen that allows users to perform various gestures to launch into apps or functions, which is pretty cool. The latency when drawing or writing with this stylus is pretty right up to par with Apple Pencil, and things like palm rejection and everything seemed pretty good to me. I've never noticed any difference between the two. I do think the Apple Pencil is a bit more natural feeling. It is a little bit larger, so I kind of like that, especially when it comes to writing. But either way, I was really happy with the experience on both, but more specifically with the S Pen on the S8 Ultra. Now, the keyboard and trackpad combination here on the S8, different story. The keyboard is fine. There's not a lot of responsiveness or clickiness to it, but it's soft, but it's fine. I have no issue with it whatsoever. But there are also some pretty useful function keys here too at the top, like the ability to assign 3 custom apps that you can launch into. You can jump into the settings pretty easily. You can take a quick shot with just one tap, or you can launch into Samsung's Dex, which we will touch on here in just a minute. Now, where this whole thing fails for me is the trackpad. It's not great. It's kind of laggy, it kind of jumps ahead, it's weird to navigate, it doesn't feel super natural, even though it is an actual cursor, which is much more natural compared to the way Apple does it with iPadOS, but the gesture system is way better on iPadOS, and even just scrolling and navigating just seemed better on the iPad. It just feels clunky overall on the Tab S8 Ultra, but I do like the stand that's built into the back of this case, especially if you're using it on a table, which is probably what you're gonna do 99% of the time, because it is just that massive of a tablet, but it is horrendous on your lap. To be fair, an iPad Pro on your lap with Magic Keyboard isn't a super great experience either, but it does feel a little bit more comfortable than the stand on the S8 Ultra. Both are great on a desk or a table, but both on your lap is just not a good experience. Battery life on both tablets has been pretty good as well. The S8 Ultra has a slightly bigger battery, but I believe it's just a little bit over 11,000 milliamp hours compared to Apple's iPad Pro being around a little over 10,000 milliamp hours. There's a bigger screen on the Tab S8 Ultra, so I feel like that just kind of cancels each other out. But Samsung does have the edge with charging, as you can fast charge this tablet at 45 watts compared to Apple's 18 watts. And finally, we have software, and this is where it becomes heavily skewed. And I'd like to preface this by saying I'm not a huge fan of iPadOS. I'd like it to be more desktop-y, but there's never been any doubt about its functionality for what it can do, especially for just most basic tasks and apps. It always runs perfectly fine for me. Apps are incredibly well built, but I just wish you could do a bit more with it. So enter in Samsung and Android for a tablet, and well, it's a completely different experience. It's not great, especially if you're using specifically just Android for tablets. It's severely lacking, even with the basic functions and with some apps that still just don't properly scale well or work well with a screen of this size. Now, Samsung specifically does kind of help this issue by adding Dex. It's a mobile desktop platform to what Samsung does with its phones and its tablets. It's actually a function key away, just like I mentioned before here in the top right corner. You press it and now you're into more of a Chrome OS type operating system. You can now have various windows scattered throughout the desktop. There's a dock at the bottom that mimics Windows or Chrome OS style docks, etc. It's better, but it's still not great. I will say if you decide to connect this tablet to a monitor, hats off to Samsung for making things scale properly and making it more desktop-like as opposed to Apple just mirroring your display, and it doesn't even stretch to the full screen, which is still just mind-blowing to me. Honestly, if you're looking for a tablet to replace your work laptop and your work consists of emails, note-taking, document writing, spreadsheets, etc., very basic office-heavy things, both tablets can handle this very easily. Performance is great on both tablets. There's no issues whatsoever. The Tab S8 can handle content consumption very well, and while I'm not an artist or designer, I feel like if there's a good app out there on Android or a good service that works for both, they're both able to handle them very, very easily. I'd feel pretty confident that the machine, no matter which one I use, could handle my workflow, and specifically with the S Pen, there are lots of features built in that just the Apple Pencil doesn't have, and so I think you're gonna be happy with both products if that's your line of work. For me, I'd stick with the iPad mostly because of the ecosystem, but I also just think the software and performance is just a little bit better all around. That stuff is important to me. Everything else, the form factor, display, etc., that can go either way. In fact, I kind of wish that iPadOS, I never thought I would say this, but everything about Apple and iPadOS was in this specific Tab S8 Ultra form factor, because I really do like the design and overall style and functionality of this tablet. Unfortunately, I don't envision iPadOS to be drastically changing in the future, but hopefully I'm wrong and maybe they can do their own version of a DeX soon. Now, for those who want quick benchmarks, here are the scores. It's pretty wild because the performance of this Tab S8 Ultra as a standalone product is very good, but the M1 chip just blows everything out of the water. I mean, in benchmarks at least, the scores don't lie. That's what you get. To me, day-to-day performance, I didn't notice a huge difference, but if you just want to make sure you have the best scores possible, then you can do with that information as you would. Of course, I'd love to know your thoughts on everything in the comments down below. Before we end today's video, I do want to give you more information about today's sponsor, OWC. If you just recently picked up a new Mac and are looking to expand ports, then the OWC Thunderbolt Hub, which is now available for new M1 Macs and all Thunderbolt 3 equipped Macs, is going to be a great option. The OWC Thunderbolt Hub offers the new Thunderbolt hubbing technology. You can now have 4 Thunderbolt ports plus 1 USB port on your new Apple M1 Mac, an Intel Mac with Thunderbolt 3, or any Thunderbolt 4 PC with this compact hub. You can now connect and charge any device with a USB-C or USB-A connector, support up to 2 4K displays or a single 5K, 6K, and 8K display, add high-performance storage, including NVMe solutions, and generally make your workflow work for you by adding AV mixers, phones, or tablets, even desktop accessories, all through one single Thunderbolt port. The OWC Thunderbolt Hub is available now, and you can click the link in the description down below to pick up one or any other products from OWC that you might be interested in. This has been Dan with Mac Rumors. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you around in the next video.